Friday, June 17th, 2016 edition of The Alex Jones Show. I'm Paul Joseph Watson. I'll be sitting in for Alex for the first half of this broadcast. Then David Knight will be coming in with his take, his perspective on current events. Alex will be joining us. He'll be filing some special reports, so be sure to stay tuned for that coming up later in the show. As far as the news is concerned, well, it's obviously hot right now. The top of Drudge Report: Obama imports 1 million Muslims during presidency. He's also linked up there my story from a few days ago. Islamic speaker admits killing gays, belief held by moderate believers. And of course, this has been a massive argument in the aftermath of the Orlando shootings, the fact that the left has abandoned, has betrayed the gay community in favor of being politically correct, in favor of appeasing Muslims. They care more about protecting the feelings of Muslims than they do protecting the lives of gay people. So now on the other side of the Atlantic, which we're going to get to as well, we've got David Cameron's Reichstag fire event basically happened yesterday with the Brexit vote, the vote for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. Of course, over the past 2 weeks or so, the vote leave camp has been pulling ahead in the polls, having been behind all along, because immigration was put at the top of the agenda. The Vote Leave campaign finally realised that this is the issue that British people care about. It got put to the top of the agenda. The polls start to swing the other way. And what happens? We have a mentally ill person murder a Labour MP on the streets of Britain, and they wasted absolutely no time whatsoever in hijacking this, in exploiting this. Before this mother of two was even dead, while she was still in the hospital, they were using this to demonize the pro-Brexit camp. Absolutely shameful from Labour, from the political establishment, from the mainstream media. We're going to get into that. We've got Joy Behar from The View, which is a show watched by, 3 million people every day. It's quite important, reaches a wide number of individuals, saying that Donald Trump is, quote, working with ISIS to kill us. That's her nuanced and cogent analysis of the Colorado gay nightclub massacre. But she's got an ally in the form of former CIA head Leon Panetta, who said that Trump is, quote, aiding and abetting terrorists, by simply pointing out that the US contrived, they helped build up, they helped create ISIS in their bid to topple Bashar al-Assad. So you've got the most ridiculous, absurd comments from someone like Joy Behar on The View being mirrored by the former CIA head, Leon Panetta. We're going to get to some of those clips after the break. State Department officials, dozens of them, are once again lobbying for US military action in Syria, but not against ISIS, against the government of Bashar al-Assad that is fighting ISIS. So they're still trying to get that act of regime change through, even though arming the jihadist rebels in the first place was exactly what led to the rise of ISIS, to San Bernardino, to the attack in Colorado on Saturday night. So we're going to get into all that and more. We've got Washington Post reporting 6 in 10 of you will share this link without reading it. They've done a study where 6 in 10 links that are shared on the internet are not actually read by the people sharing them, which again goes right to the heart of the left and virtue signaling and how they create, how they contrive this phony narrative based on virtue signaling, based on artificial promotion of narratives that are completely untrue. So we're going to get into all that and more after the break. This is the Alex Jones Show Live, breaking news at Infowars.com. Don't go away, we'll be right back. We're back live, it's the Alex Jones Show. Now, if you want to see one of the most moronic YouTube clips of 2016 so far, and let's be honest, it's got some pretty stiff competition. This was on The View, I believe, yesterday afternoon, yesterday morning. It's The View's Joy Behar, and again, bear in mind, this show gets 3 million viewers every day. That's no small fry. They've got a very large audience of very impressionable people who are also quite stupid. So she gets up there and responds to Donald Trump's comments about the gay nightclub massacre in Colorado by saying that Donald Trump is, quote, working with ISIS to kill us. Let's start this clip.
Any ties right now between the shooter and ISIS at all.
At all.
They think he, you know, except for one phone call, which everybody reminds me.
Okay, hit pause. So that's one of the other guests on the show saying that Omar Mateen, the Pulse nightclub gunman, had no ties whatsoever to ISIS. He only called cops during the massacre to pledge allegiance to ISIS. He only pledged allegiance to ISIS on Facebook during the massacre. And the Islamic State also claimed responsibility for the attack. But again, nothing to do with ISIS. Okay, let's carry on with the clip.
He mentions ISIS, but that doesn't make him tied to ISIS. I agree.
So he mentioned a whole lot of folks.
Yeah.
He said he was aligned with a whole lot of folks. Listen, nobody's going to know what the answer is. Okay,
the thing about Trump, though, is that he's the recruiter in chief. He is
for ISIS.
He is basically working with ISIS to kill us. They are working together.
Yes.
Just remember what I'm saying.
And why do you say this, Joy?
Because every time you go after the Muslims and you talk about how they shouldn't come into the country and how they're all a bunch of whatevers, you are saying to ISIS, make another video to show people who are sympathetic to your cause. And don't think that...
Pause. So she's making the argument that Donald Trump is working with ISIS to kill us. Those are her exact words, because he dares to point out that we have a problem with Islamic terrorism. You know, that's like the equivalent of saying, don't draw cartoons of Muhammad because it might trigger, it might upset the precious Muslims, and they might kill us. They might chop off our heads, so we better respect their feelings. Again, completely insane, and it gets even worse. Let's carry on.
I haven't made many videos showing Donald Trump. He is a dangerous menace to the country. And I believe, and another point, one small point about the guns, which to me, I wake up in the morning, I'm so stressed out because people are actually continuing to say, have more guns. Since 2005, half of all mass killings have occurred in this country. In 2005 is when
FBI statistics, every crime statistic you want to look at, mass shootings are down. Not that this has much to do with mass shootings, it has everything to do with radical Islamic terrorism. Continue with the clip.
Ban was lifted during the Bush administration, That is when half of all mass killings started in 2005 since the ban was lifted. So ipso facto, there is a connection to the guns.
Can I also say that I think it's very interesting. It's interesting to me that it's very telling that the first thing they notice about the shooter is that, you know, that he's Muslim. Instead of, like, exactly, you know, and it's that thing where it's...
So she's complaining that the first thing anybody noticed about the shooter was that he was Muslim. And in the background, you hear one of the other guests, I think it's actually Joy Behar herself, say that that's a racial thing to say. First of all, Islam is not a race. May I remind you of that fact. Second of all, of course, we're going to draw attention to the fact that he's Muslim. You had ISIS in their own publications calling for people to hit soft targets, calling for people to carry out stabbings, calling for people to carry out mass shootings, specifically during the month of Ramadan. But again, nothing to do with Islam. So, of course, people are going to draw attention to the fact that he's a Muslim. A matter of, 6 months ago or less, we had San Bernardino, another Islamic terror attack. These things are getting worse because ISIS is calling for them. This shooter pledged allegiance to ISIS. He was a devout Muslim. He used to get angry. He used to get triggered and threaten to kill people at barbecues because a bit of their pork touched his hamburger. I mean, this guy was completely crazy. He was a registered Democrat. He was motivated by a hateful ideology defended and supported by the left, Islam. So obviously, we're going to talk about it. We're going to draw attention to it. Let's carry on with the clip.
Very telling to see the assumptions that are made. Hate is hate. We all know it. But it is hard. You have never heard of a mass strangling. anywhere you go.
No, that's right. To the gunpoint.
You don't see mass. You don't see mass stabbings where someone just went crazy with a.
Multiple times a year in China, where guns are more restricted, they have mass stabbings. A major one carried out in 2014, which killed 29 people. In the vast majority of those cases, stabbings are carried out by radical Muslims. So yes, we do have mass stabbings carried out in pursuit of the same cause. Again, total nonsense. Let's carry on with the clip.
And people waited in line to get stabbed.
One guy killed 50 people. How did he do that?
Exactly.
With that rifle.
And I think it's interesting for me being a brown person in the United States. I will tell you, past year or so, since someone announced their candidacy, I was actually now seen as a non-American. Mm-hmm. And that is very hard for me in my day-to-day life sometimes when people see that. That's when you know that something's wrong.
Somebody was mean to her, and she doesn't even provide the specific example of what happened, and she blames it on Donald Trump. The fact that somebody made a racist comment to her over the past, 8-10 months since Trump announced his candidacy, that's Donald Trump's fault. Everything is Trump's fault. The violence aimed at Donald Trump supporters at rallies across the country is Donald Trump's fault. The Colorado shooter, a registered Democrat, a devout Muslim, somebody motivated by a hateful ideology defended and supported by the left. Must be Donald Trump's fault. Total, absolute nonsense from beginning to end, total lies. But it's not just The View that's coming out with this. This is up on Infowars.com right now. Former CIA head, Trump is, quote, aiding and abetting terrorists. The former director of the CIA, Leon Panetta, has said that GOP nominee Donald Trump is effectively helping the enemies of America with divisive rhetoric. Again, whenever you see them use this term, divisive rhetoric, that means anyone who is standing up for principles. Anyone. They call it divisive. Total fraud. Appearing on MSNBC, Panetta, CIA head under Obama from 2009 to 2011, said, quote, in 50 years in public life, I have never experienced a major party candidate making the accusations and raising the innuendos that Donald Trump raised, particularly at this moment of crisis. Bearing in mind that Trump basically predicted what would happen in Paris. He predicted what would happen in Brussels. He's been dead on all along. You can argue about his methods for dealing with it. But again, raising innuendos by simply talking about Islamic terrorism. This is the most shocking thing that Panetta has heard in 50 years of public life. Totally overblown. Total hyperbole. He goes on to say, quote, he's not only accusing the president of the United States of treason and collaborating with the enemy, but in many ways what he's saying about restricting Muslims from coming into this country, doing surveillance on Muslim mosques, is basically aiding and abetting the enemy at a time we ought to be unifying. And he goes on to criticize Trump because Trump came out with this tweet in which he said that he posted a link to a Breitbart story, which is that Hillary Clinton had the memo that Obama admin aided group that became ISIS. This is a story we posted up on Infowars.com yesterday, detailing, which we've documented for years, that when the Obama administration went into Syria, went into Libya to fund those jihadist groups, al-Nusra, who later went on to defect, to join, to pledge allegiance to ISIS, that's what helped ISIS grow in the first place. When we say the US government created ISIS, we don't mean out of thin air. They already took the jihadist rebel groups, the extremists that were in that region, gave them weapons, gave them funding. They rebranded and everybody pledged allegiance to them. So yes, Clinton and Obama are directly responsible for ISIS's spread across the Middle East. And that's precisely what Trump is referring to when he links to this Breitbart article, which details this secret memo. And this is the article. The Obama administration supported the terrorist group that became ISIS as the group struggled to gain control of the Syria-Iraq border, where ISIS now claims its caliphate, according to an intelligence report sent to Hillary Clinton. Breitbart News reported Tuesday on a secret classified intelligence report sent to then Secretary of State Clinton and other top US officials in August 2012. The report confirmed that Western and Gulf states